Hello and welcome back to DK World Tours. Today we will be covering a historically important route for the Ford Trimotor, or rather a historically important route for passenger airline travel at the beginning of air travel in the United States. And that would be from New York to Chicago. However, the Ford Trimotor was not capable of doing this all in one go, and so we will be stopping in Detroit along the way as well. So we're going to be flying with full fuel, and we're going to have our full load of passengers. So let's call it 11. I mean, not entirely accurate based upon this. It's more like 1.5 to 2 passengers, but for a load of 10. But we'll call it a full load of, let's just go ahead and say 10 passengers. All right, so we're going to take off from LaGuardia. LaGuardia was originally, I forget the name of it, but it was a different name for that airport when it was first created. And but it is, as far as I know, one of the first ones. In reality, they probably would have flown from Newark somewhere, but we're going to call it LaGuardia as our takeoff location. Fly to Detroit. Looks like we don't have any cloud cover to speak of, so we may not have any icing concerns along this route. Maybe some at the start here, since we may have a bit of cloud cover there. So that should allow us to keep a fairly realistic low altitude for this flight. Of course, at the time, it would have probably been flown VFR with, I mean, there would have been, especially at the start, there would have been no radio navigation options to begin with, so they probably would have used landmarks along the way, along with dead reckoning. But we need to maintain some decent modern safety standards for DK World Tours, so we do have an iPad over here with ForeFlight just to keep us informed. All right, let's begin. All right, welcome to LaGuardia. Pretend it's 1930. Let's get this plane in the air, shall we? Oh, I forgot landing lights, but they don't matter again because it's daytime. And in the air. Ooh, really taking off there. Get where we can see our vertical speed. I mean, look at that. That just good climb. Like, it may have a terrible cruise speed, but that's pretty solid climb performance. All right, we're heading northeast, and we need to go west. So let's get ourselves a bit of a turn in. There's New York City out there. 90 is a little, ooh, it's not one. Why is it sluggish aileron performance there? All right. Autopilot on, or gyro pilot rather. Get ourselves up to say 5,000 and then drop it to a 1 degree climb and bring into cruise. And that should get us pretty good performance. All right, let's see about leaning this out a bit now. We're already past 4,000 foot. Down to 50% on mixture, and it's still got plenty of power. So while I do not know if the Sperry gyro pilot was ever available on the Ford Trimotor, I do know that it had been invented before the Ford Trimotor and could have been installed on it. And given the rather long flight times, I mean, this is going to be a 5-hour flight for this first sector. I would not be surprised if it was available. especially given Ford's focus on improving the safety of flight, which is the main thing he wanted to accomplish with the Ford Trimotor. Bringing in something to take a workload off the pilots would have been probably well received.
For Uniform Sierra X-ray. New York approach Victor Hotel, Uniform Sierra X-ray.
All right, we're still maintaining 90 knots. All right, we're pretty close to about where we want to cruise here, so let's take it down to just a 1 degree. And back ourselves down to about 17, somewhere between 16 and 1750 RPM. And lean her out to match. Alright, slight RPM drop, so we're going to bump her back up a bit. Alright, there we go. 6 minutes into flight and we're already at our cruise. Now, let's take it back to the passenger perspective here. One thing that you can say for it is it did have plenty large windows. You could really look out and appreciate what view you would have available. Now, these windows also opened, although they're not, they don't appear to be modeled as something you can open back here. But that would make for a unique experience that we just don't have now. Imagine taking off and watching that landing gear right out your window. And you'll notice that the props pretty much, they're not in what I would call a comforting position. You lose a prop and basically it looks like Mr. Pilot here is going to be right in the danger zone for it, but it does mean you get a good look at them. Alright, expect us to take about 4 hours and 50 minutes on this flight. So go ahead, settle in, enjoy the view, and I'll maybe pop in every once in a while for course corrections, checking on performance, and any other random tidbits of information that I need to share. While pilots did use landmarks, a lot of the time that landmark would have been railroads, so I'd imagine they would have preferred a lower altitude if possible to try to make out any railroads. You can kind of follow interstates now fairly well if you know what you're looking for and you start out along the interstate. And while I did earlier say that this is a fairly non-aerodynamic airplane, it was still a cantilevered wing primarily. You don't have struts or wires or guy wires supporting the structure. So while you do have this support here for the landing gear, it was still a significant improvement over biplanes and other designs of the time that relied upon using wires to support the wing structure. And we're too close to the window. There we go. So not only was safety of primary concern in the design of this aircraft, but Henry Ford also something known as the Ford Reliability Tours, which were a test of the reliability of the aircraft. And rather than the air races that were popular before, he promoted the Reliability Tour, which had the airplanes that could fly this set routes as the winners. right, let's check the other side of the airplane. Maybe we see what that back seat would be like. There's our window and our lavatory. And from what I understand, the lavatory actually just opened straight down below, so there was no onboard waste storage, which you would certainly want to limit use to rural areas. So back up in the cockpit here. Another unique aspect of this plane for the time would have been the enclosed cockpit. Actually, the pilots felt that safety was improved by feeling the wind on their face. Whether that was really true or more just the kind of story that pilots told themselves back in the seat of the pants era of aviation, I do not know. But I can certainly say that I would prefer an enclosed cockpit. And it looks like we might run into some clouds up here, so the question now is whether we aim to go high or low. Try to climb above the icing conditions that may exist, or climb down below them into air warm enough to keep the plane from getting iced up. We'll go ahead and try climbing up to a little under 12,000 foot and then descend if necessary down through the icing to lower, warmer air, which would have been a major issue at the time period. Alright, it's looking like we might get clear of these clouds here. We'll probably be on the limit and close to icing conditions with it, so maybe we take it up just a little bit higher here. Obviously, we need to stay below the 12,500 of the FAA of 2023, but at the time, they did not follow that and would climb up to as high as 16,000, according to some pilots, as high as 20,000, but that is beyond the service ceiling of the aircraft, so take it with a grain of salt. And while I did say that there was no radio nav at the time, I'm not 100% sure that was the case, and I do know that the Ford Trimotor did serve as a flying laboratory for Bell Labs to develop some of that radio navigation hardware, at least as far as like a automatic direction finder and all that. This right here seems to be overly advanced for what should be available, but at the very least I don't remember what it's called. There was some sort of radio navigation system that actually just required only a receiver on board the aircraft in order to fly the beam, as they called it, for the radio nav. So that would have at least been possible during the time of the Ford Trimotor, whether or not it was actually done. Well, I hope you enjoyed whatever in-flight meal you had of cold leftovers that you had the forethought to bring with you. We're entering turbulence now, it seems, so we'll expect that you'll be returning that meal shortly. Yeah, it's looking like that icing's not sticking around, so we're probably getting down into above freezing temperatures. Now this would be the kind of weather that was most likely to result in fatal flights. Controlled flight into terrain and low visibility conditions, I think, was the main thing. Yeah, I don't know if we can really thread our way through this. gets too out of hand, we'll just climb back above the clouds and see if we can avoid too much icing in that section. Good news is it seems that we are clear of icing right now. So if we need to climb up because visibility gets too bad, we can take it up a little bit higher. We should be able to fly, I believe the highest minimum safe altitude on any of the sectionals here is around 5,000 to 5,500 feet. So we should be pretty much in the clear here. All right, looks like we're getting down below the worst of the clouds now, which is at just a bit above 4,000 foot altitude. Currently on track to be getting close to Detroit in about 3 hours and 45 minutes. Well, our visibility is starting to get pretty bad, and we're also starting to get into a portion of the route where I know that there's some terrain, should be to the north of us, but I am debating whether to go up to avoid possibly getting into it. All right, we got the start of some icing here. Icing started at a bit over 5,000 feet, so if we have to descend because of the ice, we will aim to stay above 5,000 feet. That will get us above terrain as well, but it looks like we're getting close to breaking out of these clouds, so we probably will be all right on our icing. And this would be one of the reasons why they called this the flying icebox. Alright, we'll go ahead and climb to maybe another 1,000 foot or so. Ice should sublimate off in that time a bit with the sun out on it. And it should keep us clear of tops of the clouds. Yeah, the ice is starting to come off. Should be good. Looks like we're probably going to break clear of clouds up here in just a bit, so we might as well level off and wait until we get there and see what it looks like. With the current headwind, we are estimating about 4 hours to get to Chicago, or Detroit, not even Chicago. All that said, imagine this in the 1930s. An airplane this big, all metal construction. You know, the norm at this time was still wood and fabric construction for an airplane, and you know, carrying one to three passengers basically. And this would have been quite something. I mean, it's a bus. It's just a big bus in the sky. So the empty weight of the Ford Trimotor would have been about 6,500 pounds. And there are F-250 pickups with curb weights larger than that. So it may have been an early time for aviation, but they still managed to build things very lightweight for the time. Alright, here we are starting to break free of that cloud cover, so we can go ahead and get it back down again, get to where Dead Reckoning got us far enough. We can get back down to an altitude where landmarks and railroad tracks would be more visible. So up here you can see that terrain I was starting to worry about, just breaking out of the clouds up right in the center and across here. That was what I was worried I was going to run into if I stayed below the clouds. That little town down to our left right now is Benton. Appears that there's a small strip somewhere in this area. Should be maybe right along here. Small grass strip of some sort. So if you've been following along on the fuel, we're an hour and a half into the flight, and we're still doing pretty well on fuel here. We've got a good ways to go, so hopefully we won't have to kick into the reserve for landing, but we are doing okay. Should be coming up to Williamstown on the left here. Sorry, Williamsport. Yeah, right through here. Alright, we're approaching 2 hours and 15 minutes until we get to Detroit, and we still have over 50% of our fuel left, so we are looking good to get to Detroit without having to take in our reserve tank at all. We also are probably getting close to maybe being able to see the lake here. Not quite there yet, but wouldn't be too surprised if it starts appearing on the horizon before long. Yeah, one thing I've not figured out yet is what's going on with the engine nacelle here. I mean, it appears to have these vents going into it, and it's pretty long, but I'm pretty sure all of the actual fuel is up in the top section here in the wing. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. If anyone knows, that'd be appreciated. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the overwater stretch of this flight. Still tracking pretty far off to the right of where we really want to be. Let's turn it back a bit just to try to get us on a better approach to Detroit. Alright, at this point we're about to cross into Canada for a stretch across the lake here and then pass over Windsor on our way to Detroit. Alright, we are now 30 minutes out from Detroit. Fuel is still good. Expect us to be on the ground in about 30 minutes. Alright, we're getting close to time to start our descent. You can ETA still 12 minutes out, looking to get on to the final approach to Detroit. All right, we can see the airport there off the left. Going for runway 22 right. Currently winds expected to be 4 knots headwind or crosswind here. Still 2 knots headwind, very low winds. Should be a pretty clean landing, assuming that we get nothing exciting on this. We hope you've enjoyed this historic flight and look forward to having you fly with DK World Tours again in the future.
1 tree, 2 decimal tree, flight uniform Sierra.
Another random fact about the Ford Trimotor. It was actually the airplane that crashed in the Indiana Jones series, Temple of Doom, I believe it was. I can't remember which one now. That was a Ford Trimotor. Oop. Stabilize it out. Probably need to get a little bit lower. We have some modern traffic starting to pile up behind us. Hopefully they're going for the center and left runway. Otherwise, they're going to have to live with our 93 knot airspeed that we are currently at. All right, let's get our landing lights on. Yep. All right. Still seem a little bit high. Airspeed still over 100 knots. Oh, we're very high now. Let's back out our throttle a bit. It descended. There's one of those jets on the left coming in. Had a stutter there. I was worried that the game was trying to crash on me. Alright. Let's get ourselves lower so we can lead off the speed once we get there. Yep, still over 100. And 4 whites, so we're way high. Good news is we don't have issues getting the airspeed to bleed off.
Detroit Metro Tower Victor Hotel, Uniform Sierra X-Ray, is 2 miles north, 900 feet, with Quebec to land. Make left base runway 22 left, Uniform Sierra X-Ray.
That's the problem with bad ATC.
Clear to land runway 22 left, Uniform Sierra X-Ray.
I'm not going to do that. Going 22 right. Feels like our airspeed... Alright, it's still a bit high, and we're definitely high. So let's back out that even more. Looks like we're just starting to get a little bit of light from the lights up here. Oh, I thought we were on. There we go.
Going to 123.675 Uniform Sierra X-Ray. Ground Victor Hotel, Uniform Sierra X-Ray taxi to the gate. Taxiing to gate Charlie Niner 1 using taxiway Alpha Tree Alpha Romeo cross.
All right, thank you for flying DK World Tours. Our flight from New York to Detroit today has taken 5 hours. Anyway, that's our flight. Local time 17:46. Let's shut her down. Okay. Thank you very much. Join me again when we fly onward to Chicago.